Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in San Francisco. We started the series back in April of 2020 during the height of the first phase of the COVID-19 pandemic and the shelter-in-place requirements. Over these past 9 months, the COVID-19 pandemic and economic meltdown has wiped out millions of jobs in both the nonprofit and small business sectors, as well as shuttered tens of thousands of small business operations. The goal of the series is to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits, small businesses, and their staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability. The series of interviews we conducted features voices from a cross-section of organizations that make up the fabric of our community. Each of them brings a unique perspective on how they and we are dealing with the issues facing our community during the global pandemic and economic depression.
Yes, it's a pandemic. And yes, we have to stay safe, but we have to learn how to help each other. We have to learn how to support each other's businesses. We have to learn how to support each other's families. And we have to learn, again, how to grow small business again. Because I think right now, the government's focusing on the bottom down. And the bottom down is drowning out the small businesses, where we should be focusing on the bottom up, because that's where the economic recovery is going to come from.
In this episode, our featured voice is Michelle Pusateri from Nana Joes Granola. Nana Joes Granola is a wonderful example of a local manufacturing startup that has been incubated through SFMade, and whose owner brings her passion for both healthy, natural foods and putting the community before profits, which is why at Nana Joes Granola, every employee is making above minimum wage. I'm joined remotely via Zoom by Michelle Pusateri from Nana Joes Granola. Thanks for being here, Michelle. And I think people would love to know why you started Nana Joes Granola. And can you tell us a little bit about the Sophie Gold Award as well?
So I started Nana Joes Granola back in 2010 with the hopes of bringing back whole food ingredients into packaged food world on the grocery store shelves. I noticed that a lot of the granola on the shelves had a ton of sugar, some additives, preservatives. And really, it started with me surfing and wanting to really go out and have a lot of energy. And I'm hypoglycemic and I'm really sensitive to sugar. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just create. I'm a trained pastry chef, and I didn't know why I didn't make it myself to begin with. But I started making my own granola. And as everybody's stories goes, friends and family loved it. They found that they were having energy. A lot of people told me that they didn't have to eat till lunch. And that was mainly what I was going for, was using whole food ingredients and not having any additives or preservatives or a ton of cane sugar. And we don't use any cane sugars. We just won a Sophie Award. It's our third Sophie Awards. We won 2 this year. We won the gold for one of our Paleo Orange, which is my personal favorite. And then we won the bronze for Paleo Hue. So we did a collaboration with Hue Chocolate based out of New York. And it's delicious. And then we also have a silver one from 2018. So that's kind of why I started Nana Joes Granola, and why I firmly believe that if you build a business inside of a community, like the Dog Patch back in 2012, it was much different. If you build a community that way, I really feel like you have to support them. And that's where community before profit came into play too.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? And the other big question is, how has COVID impacted your operation in keeping the staff of people that you have who help make the magic at Nana Joes?
So Community Before Profit, I started that back in, I think it was 2015, 2016. It's a website. I've been working on it, but just haven't had a lot of time. But I was noticing that a lot of people were feeling isolated and lost in the service industry. I grew up in the service industry since I was 15. I was front of the house for a very long time, moved from, being a barista back in 1987, which barista wasn't cool, to being, a waitress and then a bartender, and just that party life, and I made a decision when I moved to San Francisco to get sober. And 2015, 2016, there was about 4 or 5 people who committed suicide during that time. And I think my mentality on my business, on how to treat people and how to look at people and how to really support other people in this industry, it's hard. It's isolating. There's so many places to hide when you're in the service industry. You hide behind a smile, behind the bar. Nobody knows what's happening. And I think community before profit has kind of morphed into coming more towards Nana Joe's too, and being like, during the pandemic, when March 7th hit, I didn't lay off any employee. I didn't furlough any employee. I didn't lay off any employee. A lot of my employees' family members weren't working either. So I felt a huge responsibility to hold their jobs, to make sure that they were still getting paid, to do whatever I had to do to make sure that they were getting paid. So basically I went from supporting families to supporting, all 50 people. Like I employ 10 people and most people have at least 5 people in their family. So it made that community before profit a little bit more real to me, and a little bit more like I have a responsibility when I employ somebody. I don't just employ them just for them to get the job done. I employ them to give them the tools that they need to succeed, to give them the tools they need to never have to work another entry-level job again. And to also make sure that their families and everything is supported. And one of the biggest things that came out of this pandemic for us was a sense of trust and a sense of loyalty from my employees, which I never even thought would happen. And that happened because I made that commitment right away. Okay, if we do bleed an extra $5,000-$6,000 a month on payroll for them, so we can keep everybody's hours, so we can keep everybody on payroll, so I don't have to lay anybody off, then that's what we have to do. And I said to my staff, if the ship sinks, I go down with you. And that meant that I wasn't just going to drop everybody off, which some people, yes, they had to do that. I completely understand that. But we pivoted, Pierre, and we threw something online saying, hey, at the end of this pandemic, who do you want to see standing? Do you want to see the big corporations, or do you want to see the small mom and pop companies and the family-owned companies standing at the end of this pandemic? And it drew in an influx of orders, over 400 orders in 2 days after I posted a video online about, hey, we need help. This is scary to us and we want to survive this. And I need your help to help support these families that rely on me and really want me to make a difference in their lives. And I think that that's kind of morphing back into community before profit. Like, your bottom line is your bottom line. You have to have that to be able to support your employees. But your bottom line shouldn't be your base decision during a pandemic, during a crisis, during, a family catastrophe or something happening within their families. You have to look at your bottom line and make sure that your bottom line includes everybody in your business and who you've employed and around you in your community. You don't just build and then exclude your community in a hiring pool. You have to bring them in.
That brings me to, how can people who are viewing this or listening to this support Nana Joe's? You have a membership model, I noticed on your site, which gets back to your point about orders coming in. I know you're distributed through most of the major retailers, but just like restaurants I've talked to, my guess is having people directly order from you is much more profitable versus your small piece of the pie that you get by distributing your product into the retail. So can you share with the audience a little bit, how can people support you, and what are you looking forward to doing to bridging yourself between here and the other side of our lovely pandemic?
Is there an outside? That's the first question. I think the way that people can support, pick up a bag at the stores. When you're going to the grocery store and you're picking up a bag, yes, we get a smaller piece of the pie, but we also have something called velocity, which means that they count how many bags you're selling in Whole Foods. And if you sell well, you get to go to another region. So supporting us no matter what, and supporting those smaller brands when you do go into the grocery store is great. Of course, ordering online, getting a subscription to our granola is a great way, because that's income that we know that's coming in. Word of mouth, spread the word. If you like our granola, tag us on Facebook, tag us on Instagram. Word of mouth is huge. Like telling people, hey, follow Nana Joes Granola on Instagram, at Nana Joes Granola, or on Twitter or on Facebook, and interact with us on that. Tell people to follow us. When you see stuff that you like, comment on people's posts, the products that you like. I have a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I saw your post. And half of me is kind of like, why didn't you like it? Because that brings you up to more of a visual with the algorithm. So you're playing with the algorithm. I comment all the time on my friends' products because that's the way to get us up in that algorithm, to get more eyes viewing us and to get more of our communities to look at our products and to buy our products. One of the things that happened also with the pandemic was the fact that we have higher prices on our raw ingredients now because of the demand and because our freight went up. There were so many things. So the more that we can get those, like you said, online sales, it's great, but also the more stores that we can get. So it's both.
And Michelle, what would you like to see or do you see coming out of the pandemic and our economic meltdown? You mentioned a little bit about community supporting small business and their workers, but love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I think one of the biggest things that I would love to see out of this pandemic is more compassion. I think more people really helping each other, like going next door, asking your neighbor if they need anything. I think we need to come back together as a community because there's been a deep wedge that's been put between people on both sides, politically, everything. And I think we really need to come together as a community and make sure that we're taking care of each other. And if taking care of each other means that I see somebody walking down the street who is got a sign for money or whatever and handing them a bag of granola that I keep in my car, something like that, or making sure that the person walking down the street that just fell over and dropped all their groceries, don't walk past them, help them pick it up. Yes, it's a pandemic. And yes, we have to stay safe, but we have to learn how to help each other. We have to learn how to support each other's businesses. We have to learn how to support each other's families. And we have to learn, again, how to grow small business again. Because I think right now, the government's focusing on the bottom down. And the bottom down is drowning out the small businesses, where we should be focusing on the bottom up, because that's where the economic recovery is going to come from. It's not going to come from up here. It's going to come from down here. And I think the more that we support each other, the more that the big corporations and the more that the government's going to see that there's actually an uprising instead of like a downpouring.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing the story of Nana Joes. And I especially love the fact that you are supporting the entire community around your workers as well. Appreciate everything that you guys do. I am going to make sure that on our website and our listeners know how to contact Nana Joes. And please stay safe out there in our new dystopian normal.
Take care.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voice of Michelle Pusateri from Nana Joes Granola, who named her company after her grandma, who she called Nana, and both of her grandfathers named Joe. The name seems to exemplify Michelle's love of family and treating her employees and their families like her own family. To shop or to find out more about where to buy Nana Joes products, go to nana-joes-granola.myshopify.com. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. I want to thank my associate producer, Eric Estrada, along with Mel, Lila, Michael, and Laura at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. To listen to our next episode in this series and to our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities, please go to georgecoster.com. While you're on our website, please sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows. Please subscribe to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas. So send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.